Do you remember when Android was fun? I do. And I'm not talking about, if Android's plenty fun now. Android's great now, all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there was a time, a magical time, when devices like the HTC One M8 and Android manufacturers had a real true differentiation between their softwares, and each one had a little flavor that made it special. And that's certainly the case with HTC, as this device is running HTC Sense UI 6. And if you're doing an HTC video and you're not showing the clock, well, then you're doing it wrong, because that was a key part of the experience and just a wonderful, wonderful phone that we're going to talk about today. But not before we talk about today's video partner, Mint Mobile. If you're a longtime fan of the channel, then you know how much I love Mint Mobile. They are a big part of keeping this channel running. All these devices require SIM cards to test, and Mint Mobile makes it feasible for me to do so in a cost-effective manner. If you're paying too much for your cell phone service, go ahead and make the switch today. Start saving money. You could do so in as little as 15 minutes. Click the link on the screen. Use the QR code. Also in the description. Does help the channel. Try mintmobile.com/SteveAlicious will get you on the road to savings. Great 5G coverage. Great speeds, all the rest of it that you can get with unlimited plans starting at $30. You can scale it all the way down if you want to save even more money. It's really great. You could call up, you could get an eSIM and get set up in 15 minutes. You could also get a live human being on the phone if you need a physical SIM, if you're bringing your own device, whatever it happens to be. Mint Mobile makes it easy for you to make the switch. So do what I did. Go ahead and sign up for Mint Mobile today. Like I said, link in the description. Does help the channel. Thanks again to today's video partner, Mint Mobile. And we're back. So I didn't use this new back in the day, but I did get it new old stock. It was a phone that I always wanted to play around with. It was a phone that I always wanted to use. So I picked one up. I was able to pick one up real cheap. And I love when we used to make Android devices all metal. We weren't worried about wireless charge or any of this stuff. We put a little gap here of plastic on the top so it would handle any sort of antenna issues that are there. You got the dual speakers, the prominent speakers on the bezel and the chin, and we weren't worried about that. This was believe it or not, this was an LCD panel. I knew a lot of people with this phone back in the day, and I could have swore that it was an OLED because it was an absolutely gorgeous, contrasty, poppy LCD. I mean, I didn't realize that LCDs could get like this. It's a Super LCD 3, but just a phenomenal. You could tell why HTC used to mean something. You could tell why HTC used to make quality devices, and it's a cautionary tale for Android manufacturers today. It doesn't take a lot. It's not a thick line between being the hottest phone and the hottest manufacturer out there and being basically out of business. So keep on your toes, because you never know when it could come to an end. But this device was especially excellent. Snapdragon 801, if that sounds familiar, it's because it also powered your BlackBerry Passport. So it's still plenty capable. You're not going to do a lot. Believe it or not, this gets emailed just fine. I'm able to get around the security stuff and the Google stuff on here. I don't know why. A lot of other devices, I have all kinds of problems with security, whatever, and maybe it's because I set it up before a certain date or something like that, but it works just fine. The 801 was power efficient. It was snappy. It was good. This is running Android KitKat. It Sense One UI, Sense UI 6, but KitKat, Android KitKat 4.4.2. It was upgradable to Marshmallow, I believe, Android 6, but I didn't do that. So I've got this kind of on here because over the air, it's kind of tough with these older devices to go ahead. I'd probably have to side load and get it to upgrade that way. 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of storage, but of course, micro SD card, expandable storage on board. Micro USB rather, charging on the bottom of this. Headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which is great when that was still standard. So charging is slow, obviously, with micro USB. Not what we have with USB-C today, but it still got the job done. 2 4-megapixel cameras on the back. Also got the job done at the time. There wasn't any real issues there. But I don't know what it is. And maybe HTC was a part of this. But there's something about these older devices, when I go back and use them, that have basically Android 6 and sooner. So Marshmallow and before is where we really got the flavors of Android. Android 7 and up, it kind of made it all pretty standard. I mean, sure, there are manufacturers do different things here and there. Material U is different from One UI, which is different from Oxygen OS, and all the way down the line. But there was a distinct difference, especially between iOS and all the rest of it, when you were talking Android of this vintage. And I don't know how we get back there. I don't even know if there's a way to get back there, because we've kind of gotten to the point where people know what they like and they understand things, and kind of the UIs and user experiences have been perfected to a certain point. But if we could get back to something like this, that would be great. And I wouldn't mind a design element. And we said this before when I talked about the LG V20. I wouldn't mind a design element where we somehow went back to an all-metal body. Sure, it didn't wear as well. It dinged up a little bit. But you can have prominent speakers on a phone. It was the Razr phone 2 not that long ago, where you had the huge chin and bezel, whatever. I never was bothered by bezels. I'm not looking at the bezels. I'm looking at the display. And if the bezels give me added functionality, if the bezels sit there and give me these phenomenal speakers, stereo speaker setup, then I'm okay with it. If it adds functionality, if it's there for a reason, then it doesn't bother me nearly as much as some of these other phones. So I understand we want these infinite displays and all the rest of it, but I think if we could get back to just a little bit of fun with the designs, it would go a long way. And that's something that this device absolutely did. There was a time when you couldn't, those Evos devices, unbelievable sales-wise. You couldn't, Android meant Evo for a while, and HTC Evo and HTC Sense. So it's incredible to think about that wasn't that long ago, that those were the things going on with these devices. But if you use one of these, let me know in the comment section below, because they held up relatively well. They were sturdy construction, button on the top, lock. Remember, you got your lock button on the top of the device. It was curved out. It was so thin and light. Amazing. In fact, it had to like offset some of these things here on the side, but it was just a really great device to hold in the hand. No issues with that. Battery life was okay for the time. It wasn't great. You know, we didn't really get great battery life back then. If you got through an entire day, you were lucky. This was the era of battery cases, where battery cases were pretty standard. If you didn't have a battery case, you weren't doing it right. But like with the LG V20, like with some of these other things, if you're not giving us wireless charge anyway, like a lot of manufacturers don't, then consider other build materials. Consider other designs. I promise there's other stuff out there than just the glass slabs. If you're not making a foldable, if you're not making something different, give us something that looks like this. Because when I go through this and just start using it, just hold it in the hand, it brings back a lot of just fantastic memories. And these, like I said, the lighter versions of Android, the earlier versions of Android, with the Snapdragon 801, Snapdragon 821, there was a couple of ones in there in that time frame, still run pretty darn well. This thing handles email just fine. I like the typing experience on it. I like the older Android keyboard. Let's go ahead and pull it up here. So make sure I don't have any phone numbers or anything. I tried to send a message to somebody. I like these old keyboards, the old Android keyboard. I don't know if there's something, actually, that's something that somebody should tell me. If there was somebody who makes a keyboard like this now that kind of brings back that old Kit-Kat keyboard, I would love to use it. I would use it on my S24 Ultra. I don't know why we ever got away from this. This reminds me a lot of the BlackBerry on-screen keyboard, which is quite good, and also the Windows Phone keyboard, which was quite good. We used to do keyboards really well on smartphone devices. Other manufacturers, other operating systems, all the rest of it. I don't know why we got away with that, or got away from that in the preceding however many years, but keyboards are not anything like what they were in the past, and I really prefer kind of these blocky, put-together keyboards that you get on these older devices. But, of course, you got the buttons at the bottom. You got multitask or whatever. They're on screen. They're not capacitive on device. But this was a wonderful bridge phone from the older Android devices that we had from 2009 on, 2008 on, to what we had basically going forward from here. 2015, 2016 is when you really kind of the Galaxy devices came into their own with the S7, that type of stuff. So this was kind of the last of the old guard of Android devices with Marshmallow on it, looking like this, all the rest of it, the build quality and the different phones that they can make. And it's just fun to go back and see when devices were absolutely different and manufacturers did a couple different things. They didn't all look the same. The operating systems all didn't look the same. And there just wasn't glass everywhere where you couldn't tell one manufacturer from the other if it weren't for the badge on the back of the device. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.